What's going on YouTube? WestHobbiesRC. So today we are back with another SAB Raw 420. So I just got done building this model and we already did a build series, so there was no point of me doing another build series. So this is for a local buddy of mine, Jason. So Jason, thank you for allowing me to build yet another one of your helicopters. So this video is going to be about iKon setup. I had a lot of you guys ask about setting up the iKon, so that's what we're going to do. We are running an SRXL2 with antennas, Hobbywing 60 on this one because it's not going to be flown hard, 6S2400, and we are setting it up on a Spektrum IX12. So what we need to get started is we're going to have to create a new model in our radio. So I already went ahead and just created a new model. So it's nothing special, nothing fancy, just created a new model. You're going to go in and name your model. So the first thing we're going to do is go to model adjust here. And we're just going to set our pitch curve and throttle curve, just a baseline set before we go ahead and get started into adjusting and setting up the iKon. So for pitch curve here, we are going to go normal. Now, I like to do this. You guys can do whatever you like. I like to do a 30, 40, 50, and then 75, 100. And I only adjust normal mode. So I'm going to bring this guy up to 40. And that just takes some of the pitch out in normal mode. Idle up 1 and 2, I leave alone. Now for throttle curve, we're going to get to that in a second once we get to the iKon setup. For gyro, I'm going to start with a base switch. I'm going to assign it to my B switch. You would assign it to whatever switch you are using for yours. I use this back left switch for flight modes and tail gain. I use this back switch for rescue. So we're going to go ahead and set a 37, 35, and 30. And we're going to up it to 30. So now this is going to be our base gyro settings here. So now it's on the channel gear. We are good. We're going to back out now. So now we are going to go and we will just go ahead and set a throttle curve real quick, a base curve. And that is going. So now for throttle curve, we went ahead and we go 0 on 1. This is what I like to do. I know a lot of you guys like to just run flat curves and then use hold or a throttle cut. That's up to you. This is how I set up. 0, 60, all the way across. So 60 flat line, and that is normal mode. Idle up 1 is going to be a 70% flat curve all the way across.
Stud 2.
Idle up 2 is an 80% flat curve all the way across. Now that is book recommendation for 2400, 2800, and 3200 RPM. Now we need to go ahead and set our hold mode up. So now we're going to come across over here. We're going to go to flight mode setup. We're going to hit OK. We are going to go down to where it says hold switch.
Time remaining 2 minutes.
And I'm going to put it onto this back switch here.
Hold. Stud 2.
And this is where you would change your flight mode switch from B to whatever you wanted to. If you want to change it, I don't. So now we're done with that. Timer. I'm going to go to timer here, and I like to set my timer to, we're going to set it to 5 minutes, and we're going to set it to throttle out. We're going to switch it to the hold switch.
Stud 2.
And then we're going to engage it here. So now when hold is on, yes, I did break my switch off. It's being fixed. Hold is on.
Stud 2.
It's timer's off. As soon as you flip hold off, timer comes on, and you can come down here. I like to put timer clear onto the I switch. So that way I can clear the timer. And then you will go through and you're going to set all your timer alerts themselves. I turn voice for timer start, timer off. I turn that to none. I don't like the voice to tell me the timer started or stopped, but I leave it for timer reset. So now go through here and redo all your voice commands. So now we went ahead, we set everything up. So now we have voice and vibrate on high. So now our timer's set up, our hold mode is set up, our throttle curves are base set up. Your swash plate type is going to be 1 servo 90 degrees. We're going to change our frame rate and we're going to change that to 11 milliseconds. So we're going to go hybrid 11. And then we're going to come over here to swash plate type and just double check that we are at normal. So that's going to be 1 servo 90 degrees is normal. So we back out of that. You should never have to set that. It should always be 1 servo 90 degrees. So now we're going to come down here to channel input configuration, and we want auxiliary 2, which is our iKon flight mode. We want that to be switch B. Me personally, I like it to be on the same switch that my idle up modes are on. Now you can assign it to any switch that you like. So now we're going to come down here to auxiliary 3. That is going to be rescue. I'm going to set that to my back left switch, but you can set that to whatever switch that you like. So now we're done with all of this. So now let's go ahead, get the laptop out, and we're going to use our remote USB. We're going to plug that guy into the side, and we are going to start the iKon setup. So now we have our iKon plugged in. We have our helicopter with power, no blades. We're going to go ahead and click on the iKon software. It's going to come up and it's going to ask you to update. Now, this is a very important update, especially for the 420, and we'll go over that in a second. So you're going to let it update. It's going to ask you to go to the newest version. You hit yes and let it do its updating. The window will come up right here and it will start on its updating. Now remember, it is very, very important while the iKon is updating that you do not disconnect power, your battery on your laptop or your computer doesn't shut off or die, the model doesn't come unplugged. It's very important that you do not disconnect it or remove the power while it is updating, because you can lock the actual unit out and have to be resetted. So now we are done updating. It's going to come up and say that if this is an already set up model, you don't have to redo nothing, and you're going to hit OK. So now we're going to come to our first screen of the wizards. Now this is what the important part of the update is. Now anytime you update an iKon, it's always going to give you a list and everything that the new update does with the newest version. But the important part of the iKon update is to allow the governor to work with the raw 420 because of the direct drive. So you can scroll through here and read all this stuff. We're not going to go through that. So now we're going to go through and we're going to list all of our stuff. This is you don't have to do this, but we're going to. It is a raw 420 Goblin Electric, and blade name is going to be SAB. So I just like to go through here. Tail blades are going to be SAB, and motor type is going to be SAB, or you can do unlisted. So we're going to do unlisted. Motor controller is going to be a hobby wing, since we are running a hobby wing. Power supply, none. They don't have the torque cyclic servos. And then we're going to do transmitter type is going to be spektrum. And transmitter mode, we fly mode 2, so it's going to be mode 2. So now we're done with that. Our next important step is the orientation of the iKon. Now we have the iKon top up, wires back. So we're going to select this one right here. Now if you're doing it another way, then you'll select top up, wires front, side. There's multiple options, but we are top up, wires back. Now we're going to come here to the satellite side of what receiver you are using. Now the SRXL2 only works properly with a iKon 2 to get the full telemetry. So we're going to select SRXL2, and then we're going to come down here and we're going to hit spektrum bind. Now this is going to tell you to turn off the transmitter, unplug the unit. Our transmitter is off. We are just going to disconnect the unit and disconnect power. So we're going to go ahead. We are going to unplug our USB. We are going to unplug the actual model. We are going to take our transmitter. We are going to go into bind mode. We are going to get ready for bind. We're not going to push it yet. We are going to plug the helicopter back in, and we are going to power up the transmitter. And now you should see the SRXL flashing. So now we are going to push and hold bind.
Binding. Bind complete DSMX 11 milliseconds. Telemetry.
We're going to hit OK. It's going to find our telemetry packets, and we're going to go back to the iKon software now. So now we are going to plug back in. So now we're back in the iKon software. So now we're going to go back to the next stage. So we just passed the transmitter selection, the receiver selection. Now we're going to come over to here. This is going to give you a wiring diagram. Now on SAB models, they're all going to be the exact same. So what I mean by that is looking from the front of the helicopter. This is servo 1, servo 2, servo 3. So you're from the front, your front left servo is 1, your front right servo is 3, and your back servo is 2. So that's how we wire it into the actual iKon itself. And again, it explains that right here on our different swash plate selections. So we're going to be on this 1, 2, and 3, and then it'll tell you here on how to wire everything up. Also remember, when wiring your SRXL2, you are going to go SRXL2 to channel 3 on the iKon, and from the 456 port, channel 5 goes to the actual P port on the fan side of the Hobbywing ESC, and that's how you wire it for telemetry. And then also know that the SRXL itself, you remove the gray wire, so it's going to be power or negative, and then power, and then signal. So the signal's always the farthest to the outside. Remove the fourth pin, which is gray, and you put it to channel 3 of the iKon. So now we are ready to move on. We're going to come down here to the transmitter setup. And now this is a pretty important part. So this is where we're going to grab our transmitter, and we are going to move right. We have right, left, we have left. We're going to pull back on the stick, which would be backwards. It's going forward. Push forward on the stick, it's going backwards. So we're going to come down here to our transmitter. We're going to come to servo setup, and we are going to reverse elevator. And we're going to try that again. Elevator back, it goes back. Elevator forward, it goes forward. We're going to use the rudder stick now. Left rudder goes right, right rudder goes left. So we need to reverse the rudder channel. So left rudder, right rudder, positive pitch, everything is working like it should. Now, another important step, make sure you're in hold mode. We need to go to servo travel here, okay? And we're doing this for a reason. So if you look here on the actual software, on aileron, elevator, and rudder, you want to see a positive 100 and negative 100. So we're at positive 73. So we're going to go to the aileron, and we are going to up this until we get a negative 100 or a negative or positive 100. So now we're going to go do negative left, which is left turn. We need a negative 100. It will light up green. And now we need a positive 100. And you do this on aileron, elevator, and rudder. You can do it on throttle and pitch, but it is not necessary. So now we have left 100, right 100, and we're going to do the same on elevator. Come down to elevator. We need a negative 100 and a positive 100. And again, you're going to do that through the travel menu. So usually a good default value is 132%. Now, that doesn't always mean it's going to work, but for everyone that I have found, 132% is what gets you on spektrum to that negative and positive 100. So I always start at 131, 132, and I check it. So we're at 100, 100, 100, 100. So then you're going to do the same with your rudder. So now we have a positive and negative 100 on aileron, elevator, and rudder. So now if you wanted to do throttle, you could. I have found it's not needed. Also here, we're going to look and notice that we need to reverse our flight mode switch, and we need to reverse our rescue switch. So auxiliary 2, auxiliary 3 always needs to be reversed depending on the way you like your switch. I like my switch to be to me is rescue, away from me is off. A normal mode is away, idle up 1, idle up 2. That's how I do it. You can do it however you feel fit. Now we're going to come over to swash plate. So now we're going to have a clockwise rotation. So we're going to select clockwise rotation, and we're going to come down. We need HR-3 120. So we have clockwise rotation, which means that the rotor head spins clockwise. So if this is your main rotor, main blade right here facing, it's going to spin like a clock. And then HR-3 120, servo 1, 2, and 3. That's what we have. So now we're going to come over to here to our servo setup. So now we are running bone stock CL 508 on cyclic and 0604T on tail. So for tail servo, we are going to select. So now for tail servo, we are going to select high-end specific digital. They are a 760, 560. So now our tail servo is set. The tail servo will energize, and you should have complete control of the tail. Now cyclic servo, same thing. High-end digital, 1520, 333. So now all your servos should be working. Everything should be backwards, but it should be working. Tail, it's working. So now we have to go in. So now we're going to go into swash plate. And now it's going to say that you cannot enter check mode because the throttle is not at 0. Now, what you want to do is you want to go to throttle curves. You want to go to hold mode, and you want to go to a negative value until the check mode initializes. So I like to go to around -9. So now we're at a -9. Now we're in check mode. How do we know we're in check mode? We're in check mode when we move our cyclic or anything and it jumps. Same with the tail. We are in check mode because it is jumping. Now we want to hit servo reverse and do it until our swash reverses till it's right. So we need to check. It is all backwards, all the directions. So we're going to hit servo reverse again. And we're going to try it. So that's back elevator forward, left, right. That's going to be negative. That's positive. So now our swash itself is set up correctly. So then this is where we're going to go through and we're going to check for 90 degrees on all servos. So if you have a swash plate leveler, this is the easiest way to do it. Or you can go by actually measuring the head lengths and everything to make it the same. You will put your little servo checker and you're going to look and notice that our servos are off. So we're going to start with servo 2 because it's the easiest one. It's in the back. Servo 2, we are going to come down here, servo 2, and we are going to add servo 2. Now, if you have a torque box, that's what makes this very easy because with a torque box, you can pre-do your center. We're going to look at it and we're going to adjust until our servo is perfectly aligned. Now we're going to grab our servo arm gauge and we are going to slide this guy right onto here just like this. And you're going to want to hold this and look at that arm and make this arm match this little guide by your plus and minus in the iKon software. Now, once you adjusted them, you should be able to have your servo arms will be dead even, which is really hard to see on camera, but dead even with your pitch gauge or your servo gauge. And then your back servo is simple, just 90 degrees. So now your swash plate, if your linkages are set up to the manual by millimeters, everything, you should have a pretty much dead level swash plate. Now I've been doing this so long, I can look at a swash plate and get it dead level almost every time. I literally never use swash plate levelers. I only just measure linkages and by eye, and I always have a perfectly level swash plate. So now we are done with that. We're going to go and set our positive and negative pitch. Now, before we set our positive and negative pitch, we need to go ahead and put our blades on. Now, if it makes you feel more comfortable, disconnect 2 of your motor wires. You got to be safe. So we are going to put our blades on now, and then we will set our positive and negative pitch and then move on with the rest of the setup. So now we have our blades on and we are in check mode. Again, how we know is it is going to jump. So I always, no matter what helicopter it is, I start with 0 pitch. Now, you need a digital pitch gauge. This one I bought on Amazon probably a year or so ago. Still working, still doing what it should do. Works great. That's what I set all my helicopters up with. So you want to set your blade with the boom. So we are going to set the model just like this. We're going to start with 1 blade. And what I do is this part of your frame here is going to be the most level part of your helicopter. So what I do is I will rest my pitch gauge on here and I will turn it on. And we are about 0.1 right there. I always hit 0 and I zero it out. And then now I'm going to come up to my blades, slide the pitch gauge on, and now we're at mid stick and check mode. And we are on this blade negative 0.1/2 of a degree, right at that 1-2 mark. So now what we're going to do is you would adjust this linkage till it is a perfect 0-0. Now it is very hard to get a perfect 0-0, but you can do it. So we're going to check the other blade. And if we're right there at that 0.1, 0.2 mark on both blades, we call it good and I leave it there. So now we're on the opposite blade and we are at 0.1. So I'm going to call it perfect. And the reasoning being is because you can only go half turns at a time. So you're either going to go too much or too little. So if you have a turnbuckle, you can fully dial that in till it's 0-0 flat. But we're going to stay right there at that 0.1, 0.2 mark. So now we know we are good on our head. We look at our little notches and they are going to be dead at that mid stick point. Now we are going to go to positive pitch and we are going to see what we're at. We're at 12.6, 12.7 degrees. Now, In the software, you will notice if we go negative, we are going to be at 12 degrees. So we're right there at 12, a little less than 12 on negative. So now in the software is where you would adjust the positive and negative value of your positive and negative pitch. But I have set up well over 100 icons, and this is with all of them. Some people will say that you don't have proper geometry or your swash plate isn't level. It doesn't matter what you do. This is the only way to fix this. So if you notice, we are at 12.1. So we are going to up this until we hit 13 degrees because that's where I want to set the pitch on this model. So we're right there at 13, 13.1, 13.2. So now we're going to go on our radio to positive pitch. And now we're at 13.8, 13.9. So there is no way adjusting here. We're going to back it back down. And you will see that we're going to go back to 13, try to get it at 13 flat. And then we're going to go to negative now on our transmitter. And we're at 12, or a whole degree off. So what I do is I know that we are at 30. We're going to set our positive one way. So we're going to come up here to positive. We're going to go up to 13 degrees even. And then I'm going to go into my transmitter, go into servo setup, and I'm going to go to travel. Go down to pitch on travel, and I'm going to adjust my negative here. So we know that we are at a positive 13 degrees. So I'm just going to add travel until we get to match our positive pitch. So now we go positive 13.3, 13.2, negative 13 flat. We'll add a little bit more, and we're going to call that good. So that is the only way in iKon that I have personally found to get an accurate positive and negative pitch. We are done. So we had to go -4 points on our value, but now our positive and negative pitch is there. So now we are going to go to cyclic. And what cyclic is for is to adjust your cyclic to left and right degree. So we went back to 0 pitch, and now we're going to go right. We're at 13.5, 13.5. Now, what I personally do, now you can do this to your liking. You're supposed to slow the cyclic down. What I do to get the most travel is I go to negative and I look for binding to get the most servo travel that I can. Go to positive, I look for binding. Nothing is binding, nothing is hitting, so I leave my cyclic at 50. So now our next step, we're gonna go to tail servo. Now what tail servo is for, we need to check and set our travel in the tail and check for binding. So first thing we are gonna do is we know that we are at 90 degrees in the software. So now we're gonna come over to our helicopter and we're gonna check that tail servo. So we are dead 90 at the servo. So for mechanical and proper leverage, we are going to, just for the demonstration, I'm going to fold this blade in. Now I can look at it and don't have to do this and tell you. So I like 2 to 4 degrees of right rudder. So that is tail blade away from the boom. If you fold the bottom blade in, it should be closer to the boom. That is what I like for a proper mechanical tail and torque against the actual main rotor. So we know that 90 degrees at the servo, we have proper tail setup. We are about 4 degrees of right positive rudder pitch at the tail. So now we're going to go and we're going to give it full right rudder and we're binding. You can hear the servo. We're going to go full left rudder. We don't have enough travel. So now when you move your rudder stick to the right, tail slider should go to the left. When you move your rudder stick to the left, tail slider should go to the right. Now you can fold this upper blade, the top tail blade in, and when you give it left rudder stick, tail blade goes left, right rudder stick, tail blade goes right. So that is the way to tell that your rudder is proper, and we can, when we finalize our checks, we'll check for the tail gyro. So now what we're going to do is we're going to hold right rudder, and we're going to use our plus and our minus to eliminate the binding. So now we are going to go full right rudder. We're binding. We're going to come over here to this minus section, And we're gonna do this and hit that until we are completely free. And you can tell the gap that is in here. So I'm going to add just a little bit more. And I know we're not binding at all. And then I'm gonna go left and I'm gonna add right there. So now we have full rudder deflection and no binding on the actual tail mechanism. So we know that our tail servo is not gonna get hot, it's not gonna buzz, it's not gonna hum, none of that stuff. So now we're gonna go on to the next step. So next step is page 10 of the iKon software. We need to select blade selection. So we are gonna do 2 blades because this is a 2-bladed helicopter. And we are gonna select 420 to 510 on the blade size. Now what this is gonna do is this is gonna give a default value of gains, P gain, I gain, D gain. It's gonna give you an overall preset value that you can adjust on from there. Now we're gonna come over to page 11, which is the auto level, rescue, and flight mode section. So now the way that iKon is set up, you have 3 flight modes. Okay, and that 3 flight modes is going to be on my B switch, this switch right here. And my rescue setup is on my back A switch. So that's the way that I do it. You can assign it to different switches like I showed you in the very beginning of the radio setup. So now I'm not going to use auto level. Now I see this question a lot. You cannot use auto level in default/normal mode, and it's for a reason. It's so when the helicopter is powered up and initialized that it doesn't initialize with auto level. I had a good buddy of mine, and Jeff, you know what I'm talking about. He powered the helicopter up on a 470 that we built in auto level, and the helicopter tried to find level, bank angle limits, and he ended up crashing. Not a good day. So we're going to come down here. I'm not going to set, you can set auto level and use rescue on any flight mode. And you could technically get around and reverse your B switch so that normal is here, but I highly recommend against that. So we're gonna come down here to our auxiliary channel and we're gonna set auto level and we're gonna set rescue here. Now that is going to be on this back A switch. So now when I flip this, the helicopter is going to go into rescue mode, which I will show you that working. So right now we're at full negative pitch, full positive pitch. Now when I flip switch A, which is auxiliary, it's gonna go full positive and then it's gonna come back to where your preset throttle is right now. So if we're at half stick, when we flip it, it's gonna go positive and then come back to half stick. And that is the actual rescue itself working, and it works really good. So now we have set up our auto level / rescue switch. We're gonna leave these 3 alone. I'm not gonna do anything here. Now down here is going to be your adjustments. You can add how many pitch max for your rescue pitch, how much you want. It's at 75%, and you can add the rescue pitch duration, how long it's gonna stay there. Factory default is 0.6 of a second. Now, if you don't know anything on iKon, if you have a question, if you don't know how to adjust something, what it does, hold your cursor over it and it will tell you step by step, no matter what it is for gains, for anything. Awesome feature. I really like that. So now we're gonna get to the governor point. And this is the part that a lot of people have issues with. So now what are we gonna do for governor? So now for governor, we need to set pulse for rotation. And pulse for rotation is 21 poles. So now we need to come to our main gear ratio. Now we're gonna go for main gear ratio. We're gonna delete this number and we're gonna just put 1. For tail gear ratio, we're gonna delete that and just put 4 because it's direct drive. So the pulse for rotation, 21, main gear 1, tail gear 4. And we're gonna come down to our telemetry input. We are using a hobby wing, so that is where our telemetry input is gonna be coming from. So now correction factor, milliamp used, and cells. This is a Hobby Wing 60, so this part of it does not work on the Hobby Wing 60. 80 and up, it does, but you would put in your milliamp correction factor percentages. So after you fly a pack, and you would put in your milliamps total pack. So like, for example, we're flying on a 2400, so we would put in 2400, and then for minimum cell voltage, we're just gonna put in 6 because it is a 6-cell battery. And now again, if you don't know something, it will explain it right here. Just like poles for rotation is going to be the pole count of the motor divided by 2. So if it's a 10 pole motor, you would set poles for rotation for 5. This is set for 21. So now we come down here Now for throttle calibration reading here, I've personally have not found any pluses or minus for actually calibrating it. I've done it without and done it with doing it. Doesn't make a difference, so that is up to you on if you want to set throttle calibration. So now we're going to come down to speed 1, 2, and 3. These are our head speed for modes. So it's going to be normal mode, idle up 1, idle up 2. So for that head speed there, we're going to set 2400, 2800, and 3200. Now this is going to be our RPM and this is our head speed RPM. Now, because this model is for Jason and he is not a 3D pilot and he does not gonna smack this helicopter around and it's running a 60 amp ESC, we're going to completely change these numbers. Now this is for if you were gonna be smacking it, 3Ding it, this is what you would want to set your head speeds. This is what I run on my personal 420, 24, 28, 32. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make this head speed 2200 RPM in normal mode. We're going to make this head speed 2400 and we're going to make this head speed 2800. This will be a very docile and you could lower it even more, but if you are, I would recommend changing the pulley. So now we're going to come down here and we want motor is electric. Governor gain, I leave at 50%. There's really no need to adjust it. Only on bigger models you might need to, but on 420 you do not. So this down here, if you spin up your motor, this will read and give you your RPM of your main motor and your governor engaged and magnet. So now we are done with governor setup. Very simple. We're going to come over here to our flying style and setup. Now this flying style and setup is set to the B switch that I have it set. So as I flip through, it's going to change the color. Green is where it's on in that particular mode. So for setup 1, we're going to do sport. For setup 2, we're going to do acro. And for setup 3, we're going to do acro. Now, if you're a 3D pilot, I would do sport or acro for normal mode if you're not going to be 3Ding it. And then I would do 3D, and then go into the advanced menus and speed everything up. But this is an important part. We want to select use governor. Use governor. I never select it for normal mode. Now we're going to come over here to the last part of the iKon setup, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the advanced menus. Now we need to check and make sure that our gyro direction is correct, and this is a very, very important step. We're going to start with the swash plate, making sure that the direction is correct. So when we tilt the helicopter forward, swash plate should go backwards. When we tilt the helicopter backwards, swash plate should go forward. When we tilt the helicopter to the left, it should go right. And when we tip it to the right, it should go left. And or for other people, the swash plate should always stay level. So the swash plate should stay level no matter which way the helicopter is moving. So again, helicopter forward, it goes back, back it goes forward, left it goes right, right it goes left. So now let's check the tail. So now I went ahead and folded the top blade in so it would make it easier for visual checking on this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move our radio so we don't drop that again, because I already did that once and broke a switch. Very upset about that, but that's beside the point. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the tail fin of the helicopter. We're going to slide the nose to the right. That's going left. We're going to slide the nose to the left. It's going right. So that is working correctly. So if we take the helicopter, put the nose right, the tail should go left. And if we put the nose left, tail should go right. So now our gyro direction is correct on swash and on tail. So now that we know our gyro direction is correct on the swash plate and on the tail, I want to talk a little bit about advanced menus. Now we are completely done with setup. The helicopter is ready to go fly and you tune accordingly. So now advanced menus. If you don't know what you're doing or you're very new to iKon in the software, I would recommend staying out of advanced menus unless you have an issue. So now advanced menus, we're going to have a whole lot more options. Now the common options right here, orientation, receiver, CCPM, servos, rescue, and throttle / governor is going to be what we have on the Wizard, but just a little bit more in depth where it's a little bit more options. So I like to go to setup. And this is where we are going to do any of our tuning, our rotational rate, our speed adjustment, all that stuff. So I'm going to come over here to tail. Now, personally, I like a very fast tail. So right now it's at 380, 430, 430 rotation speed. I personally run a 450 in normal, a 600 in idle up 1, and a 700 rotation speed in idle up 2. I'm not going to adjust any of this because this is set up for Jason, not for me. So this is where you would adjust all your rotation speed. Now, a nice little thing that I really like is this is where you're going to adjust all your rotation speed for cyclic as well. I am going to come over here and I'm going to speed up cyclic to 500 just because it is very slow for my liking. But I go through here, I'll speed up cyclic to 500, and then you can do that on all 4 of your modes or all 3 of your flight modes. So now we have our rotation speed for idle up 1, idle up 2 at 500. Now this is where you would adjust all of your gains for your PIDs on elevator and aileron. Now down here in input, which is, I really love this about iKon, is we have so much more tunability. So we have pitch lightning. Now this is going to be how fast the cyclic responds around center. So normal and normal mode or in setup 1 is going to be -5. I like to run a +10 and idle up 1, and I run a +15 and idle up 2. And that's going to give you a very crisp, a very fast cyclic response around a collective response. Now, if you want to go the opposite, you would go to a negative. And what a negative value is going to do is going to make it a lot softer. It's going to make the helicopter respond a lot less. And again, come down here, hold your cursor over there. It's going to give you everything you need to know or want to know about each individual value. So now I'm back in the wizard. We went through our checklist, which is the very last step. We are good to go and we are done. It's just as simple as closing out the iKon software. So now that we have done that, we can go ahead now, unplug our remote USB, put our canopy on, and we are ready to go fly. The canopy tossed back on, now we are ready to go fly. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know a lot of you have asked me about this. Sorry it has taken me so long, super busy, but the Goblin Raw 420 iKon setup on a spektrum transmitter, and of course, doesn't matter the transmitter, the setup's going to be the same. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Go ahead and give this video a like, subscribe, take care, and have a great day.